The busy spaceport buzzed with life as ships came and went, carrying travelers from 100 different worlds. Humans were rare here. Most visitors were tall, scaled, or covered in strange armor. Among them, Jace, a young human man, walked casually, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, a small smile on his face, but he didn't notice the sharp silver eyes following him. Officer Yira, a Valorian officer known for her strictness, narrowed her gaze. Her long, dark purple hair was tied back tight and her polished armor glinted under the lights. She had been scanning the crowd for suspicious activity when she saw it, a strange bulge on the human side hidden under his jacket. Suspicious, she muttered under her breath. Without hesitation, she moved. Her boots clicked loudly against the metallic floor as she pushed through the crowd. Other aliens moved aside quickly. No one wanted to get in Officer Yira's way. "You. Stop right there," she shouted. The entire corridor fell silent. Everyone turned to look. Jace froze mid-step. Slowly, he turned around, raising one eyebrow in confusion. "Me?" he asked innocently. "Show your identification," Yira demanded, her voice cold and sharp. Jace shrugged and pulled a small card from his pocket, tossing it to her without fear. She scanned it quickly. Name, Jace Terran. Species, human. Clearance, visitor. No criminal record. Still, her eyes went back to the bulge hidden under his jacket. "What are you hiding?" she said, stepping closer, her hand moving towards the blaster at her hip. Jace smiled lazily. "Nothing illegal, I promise." Yira wasn't amused. She signaled to two more officers nearby. They surrounded Jace, weapons half drawn. The tension grew, heavy. Passers-by whispered, some even recording on their holo devices. A human causing trouble? It would make the news for sure. Yira activated a small scanner device. It beeped and flashed as it moved across Jace's body. When it reached the bulge, it went crazy, beeping louder and faster. "Step aside," she ordered him. "You really don't want to do this?" Jace said softly, almost laughing. "Move," she barked. With a dramatic sigh, Jace spread his arms. "Your funeral." Yira reached forward and grabbed the edge of his jacket. In one swift motion, she yanked it open and gasped. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't contraband, it was a small, shivering creature. Nestled against Jace's side was a tiny alien baby, its skin a soft blue, its large golden eyes blinking up at her. It squeaked pitifully and curled tighter against Jace's body for warmth. The crowd gasped. Someone muttered, "Is that a Valorian youngling?" Yira's face turned a deep shade of violet, a clear sign of embarrassment among her people. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Jace tilted his head and smiled wider. "Told you it wasn't illegal." But, where did you get that child?" she demanded, struggling to regain her composure. "I found him abandoned in the lower markets," Jace explained, his tone softening. "He was cold, hungry, and scared. I couldn't just leave him there." Yira stared at the tiny creature clinging to Jace's jacket. It whined softly, reaching a tiny hand toward her. Something strange happened then. Her scanner beeped again, but this time a different color. A holographic message burst from the device. It was old, crackling with static, but the words were clear. "If you find this child, please, protect him. He carries the bloodline of House Veliara, ancient protectors of Valoria. Betray him and you betray your own honor." The crowd fell silent again. Yira's heart skipped a beat. House Veliara. It was a name whispered in legends, said to be wiped out centuries ago. And now here it was, living proof wrapped around a human stranger. She lowered her weapon slowly. "You understand," Jace said quietly, "why I couldn't just hand him over to anyone." Yira nodded stiffly, though her mind raced. If what the message said was true, then this child wasn't just important. He was dangerous. Political forces would kill for him. And now, she had pulled public attention straight onto them both. "This conversation is not over," Yira said, sharply. "You will come with me, immediately. Jace gave a playful salute. "Lead the way, officer." As they moved through the crowd, the baby alien watched Yira with wide, trusting eyes, and deep inside her something stirred, an old, forgotten feeling. Honor, duty, protection, but also fear. Because she knew, this simple inspection had just turned into something far bigger than she was ready for, and everyone in the galaxy would soon be coming after them. The cold metal walls of the detention room buzzed quietly, filled with a heavy silence. Jace sat calmly on a metal bench, still cradling the small alien baby inside his jacket. Across from him, Officer Yira paced like a restless predator, her armored boots tapping loudly with each step. She wasn't angry anymore. She was confused and deeply unsettled. "Explain everything," she demanded at last, stopping and facing him. Jace smiled lightly, brushing a finger over the baby's tiny forehead. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Yira snapped, folding her arms. Jace leaned back, thinking. For a moment, he decided to start where it hurt the most. The truth. This little guy was being auctioned, he said quietly. "Sold like an object, right under your nose. I bought him out before the slavers could finish the deal." Yira's sharp eyes narrowed. She didn't like hearing that, especially because it hinted at corruption inside her own station. "And the Bulge?" she asked coldly. "You risked imprisonment just to smuggle him?" Jace laughed softly. "You called it a bulge like it was dangerous. Guess it kind of is. Politically, at least." Yira's cheeks darkened again with a soft violet hue, a Valorian sign of deep embarrassment. Still, she wasn't convinced yet. She stepped forward, pulling out a larger, more advanced scanner. "No tricks this time," she warned. Jace shrugged and opened his jacket slowly. The baby alien peeked out shyly, blinking at the bright scanner light. Then, without warning, the tiny creature reached out and grabbed Yira's armored hand with its little fingers. Beep, 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 the scanner flashed. Furiously, a series of ancient symbols appeared on the screen, royal emblems of Valoria, lost for hundreds of years. The machine's voice spoke loudly for all to hear. Genetic match confirmed. House Velyara bloodline detected. Immediate protection protocol activated. The lights in the room flickered. An emergency beacon embedded in Yira's armor suddenly flared to life, broadcasting a silent distress signal into the station's security grid. Yira staggered back, stunned. The baby alien whimpered and reached for her again. A deep ache formed inside Yira's chest, something she hadn't felt since she was a young cadet, before the galaxy taught her to bury emotions under duty and pride. She looked at Jace, her voice tight. "Do you understand what you've done?" Jace stood slowly, adjusting the baby into a sling across his chest. "I saved him. That's what matters. But now every bounty hunter, every mercenary, every greedy noble will come after you," she hissed. "The child is not just rare. He is power. Whoever controls him could claim Valoria's ancient throne." Jace smiled faintly. "Good thing I'm not planning to sell him then." Yira shook her head in disbelief. "You're insane." A loud crash outside the room cut their argument short. Yira drew her blaster instantly. Jace tensed, shifting his body to shield the child. The door to the detention room shuddered under a heavy blow, then again. And again. "They found us already," Yira whispered. Jace looked amused even now. "Told you it was a dangerous bulge." Yira gave him a sharp glare, but couldn't help the tiny smirk tugging at her lips. Boom. The door burst inward, revealing a squad of armored bounty hunters, weapons raised. Without thinking, Yira stepped in front of Jace, blaster drawn, teeth bared. "Get behind me, human," she growled. "After you, officer," Jace replied with a wink. The baby alien squeaked in excitement as the first shots fired, and the strange, unlikely alliance between a strict alien officer and a reckless human truly began. The echo of blaster fire still rang through the ruined detention hall as Jace and Officer Yira sprinted down the dark service tunnels. The baby alien clutched tightly against Jace's chest. Smoke and flashing red alarms turned the world into a nightmare maze. Every corner they turned could hide enemies, or worse. But it wasn't the danger that made Jace nervous now. It was Yura. She was silent, too silent, her jaw tight, her eyes dark with something more dangerous than anger. Fear. Finally, as they ducked into an abandoned docking bay, Yura slammed her palm against the control panel, locking the heavy doors behind them. The moment the doors sealed shut, she spun toward him. "You need to listen carefully, human," she said, her voice low and urgent. "This isn't about you anymore. It's not even about me." Jace wiped soot from his face and nodded. "I'm listening." Yura knelt beside him, her armor creaking. She wasn't a proud officer anymore. She looked desperate. "That child," she said, pointing at the baby who blinked up at her with innocent golden eyes, "is not just from my bloodline. He carries a genetic code, a secret key that can unlock the Valorian royal vaults." Jace frowned. "Vaults?" "Vaults filled with ancient technology," Yura whispered. "Weapons, ships, knowledge lost for centuries. Whoever claims him can restart the Valorian Empire." Jace whistled low. "And you're telling me this because—" Yura's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "I need your help," she said. Jace blinked. "Come again?" "I can't protect him alone," she said. "Not against bounty hunters, not against corrupt officers, not against the monsters who will come after him now. I need you, Jace Terran. You're reckless, you're stubborn, and most importantly, you care. You prove that." Jace looked down at the tiny baby alien now dozing against his chest, completely unaware of the storms raging around him. A moment of silence passed. Finally, Jace said with a small grin, "You're asking me to be a babysitter for a royal superweapon?" Yura's eyes flashed. "No. I'm asking you to be a protector of Valoria's last hope." Before Jace could answer, the baby stirred, and a soft light shimmered around them. Both of them gasped. The light wasn't random. It was forming symbols in the air. Old Valorian runes. The message was clear. "Chosen Guardian." The symbols floated toward Jace and disappeared into his skin. Yura stepped back in shock. "You've been marked," she said, voice full of awe and fear. "You're bound now. If you abandon him, it will destroy you." Jace laughed nervously. "Great. So now I'm cursed, too?" Yura shook her head. "No. You're honored. The highest honor Valoria can give." From beyond the locked docking doors, heavy pounding began again. Enemies hadn't given up. Jace stood up, cradling the baby tighter. His easy smile faded into something harder, sharper. "Well," he said, "looks like I'm in this whether I like it or not." Yura nodded once sharply. "We must get to my ship. It's hidden in the lower hangars. If we reach it, we can escape." "Lead the way, princess," Jace said with a wink. Yura stiffened. "Don't call me that." Jace just grinned wider. "Whatever you say, Your Highness." The pounding grew louder. Sparks sprayed from the edges of the door. Time was running out. Together, a stubborn human and a fallen alien officer carrying the last heir to a forgotten empire turned and ran, not knowing if they were racing toward survival or toward their doom. The station lights flickered and died, plunging the docking bay into darkness. No alarms, no sirens, just the heavy sound of Jace's boots hitting the metal floor and the quiet, chilling echo of footsteps chasing behind. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were there. Hunters, silent, merciless, paid to take the child and kill anyone in the way. Jace pressed the tiny alien closer to his chest. The baby whimpered softly but stayed quiet, sensing the danger. Beside him, Officer Yura moved like a ghost, her hand gripping a small energy blade, her every step precise. "Stay close," she whispered. Jace nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The lower hangars were supposed to be abandoned, old, forgotten, rotting with rust. But now they felt alive with danger. Every shadow a possible enemy, every creak of metal a warning. They hurried through narrow service tunnels, winding paths that twisted and turned without mercy. One wrong step, one loud breath, and they would be found. Yura stopped suddenly, raising her hand. Jace froze. Ahead, in the dim light of a broken wall panel, a shadow moved, fast and low. Not a normal patrol. Trap. Yura mouthed silently. Jace's mind raced. He looked around, scanning for anything useful. That's when he spotted it. A maintenance vent just above them, half open. Without thinking, Jace shifted the baby carefully into Yura's arms. She looked at him, startled. "You'll be faster," he whispered. "Take him." Before she could argue, Jace leapt, grabbing the edge of the vent and pulling himself up with surprising strength. His body disappeared into the darkness above. Yura cradled, the baby against her chest, heart pounding. She didn't like trusting others, but this human, he moved like someone used to impossible odds. Suddenly, 3 figures stepped into view, bounty hunters in black, faces hidden behind breathing masks. They carried shock batons designed to disable targets alive. Yura backed into the shadows, barely daring to breathe. Above them, hidden in the ceiling vents, Jace moved silently, crawling like a predator. He could see them now, hear them talking. "Orders are clear," one said. "The child first. Kill the escorts." "Fast and quiet," another hissed. Jace's jaw tightened. He had no fancy armor, no heavy weapons. But he had one thing these hunters didn't expect: desperation. And desperation, he knew, made humans the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. He waited until they were right below him. Then, he dropped. Jace landed like a hammer, knocking one bounty hunter to the ground. Before the others could react, he ripped the shock baton from the fallen man's hand and swung hard, taking down the second. The third bounty hunter roared and lunged at Yura. But she was ready. In a blur of movement, she sidestepped, grabbing the attacker's arm and driving her blade into his side. The hunter crumpled without a sound. Silence returned. Only their heavy breathing filled the dark corridor. Jace stood slowly, wiping blood from his mouth. He looked at Yura and grinned, breathless. "That silent pursuit you promised," he said, "wasn't very silent." Yura gave him a rare, tight smile. "Better noisy than dead." The baby chirped softly, sensing their survival. Jace took him back gently. But before they could relax, Yura's scanner beeped once. A low, urgent warning. More heat signatures. Approaching, twice as many. They had minutes, maybe less. Jace cursed under his breath. "No more sneaking," Yura said grimly. "We fight our way to the ship." "Sounds fun," Jace said. "After you, officer." With weapons drawn, the human, the alien officer, and the royal heir raced through the burning heart of the dying station, chased by enemies, haunted by destiny, and carrying the last hope of a forgotten empire. And somewhere deep in the darkness, a far greater enemy was just beginning to move. The stolen cargo hauler shook violently as it tore away from the burning space station. Inside the cramped cockpit, alarms blared. Sparks sprayed from broken panels, oxygen levels falling, shields barely holding. Jace gritted his teeth, wrestling with the alien controls. He had no idea how to fly Valorian tech, but he knew crashing wasn't an option. Behind him, Officer Yura cradled the tiny alien heir, her armor scorched, her face grim. They had escaped, but just barely, and now they were stuck together, drifting, alone in the void with nowhere safe to run. "You call this a plan?" Yura snapped, her voice sharp. "I call this improvising," Jace shouted back over the sirens. "Improvising will get us killed," she barked. He spun in his seat, glaring at her. "Maybe you should have flown the ship yourself, Princess." "I told you not to call me that," she roared. The baby alien whimpered, sensing the anger. Instantly, both of them froze. Jace sighed and slumped back in the chair. "Look," Yelling isn't helping. Yira took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her voice was low but steady. We need to work together. Jace nodded, slowly. Yeah, we do. But deep inside, neither of them truly trusted the other yet. Jace was reckless, unpredictable. Yira was proud, secretive. Both carried wounds deeper than they dared show. And between them, a fragile, innocent life that depended on two people who barely understood each other. The hauler's engines sputtered and died, leaving them floating silently in the dark between stars. A terrible, hollow quiet filled the ship. Jace stared out the cracked viewport at the endless blackness. We need somewhere to hide, fast. Yira pulled up a battered holomap. There's an old mining colony nearby, dead zone. No patrols, no witnesses. Perfect, Jace said. Dead zones are my specialty. He started rerouting power manually, hot wiring systems like a street thief. Yira watched him with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant admiration. You're not military, she said flatly. Jace chuckled without looking up. Never claimed I was. Then who trained you? She pressed. He paused for half a second, just enough for her to notice before shrugging. Life. Yira narrowed her eyes but said nothing more. Secrets. Both of them were drowning in secrets. The ship jolted forward again, engines sputtering weakly to life. They weren't out of danger, but at least they were moving. As they hurtled toward the hidden mining colony, an uneasy silence settled between them. Finally, Yira spoke quietly. You could have left, she said. Back at the station during the fight, you could have run. Jace glanced at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. Yeah, he said simply. I could have. Why didn't you? He smiled faintly, adjusting the sling around the baby alien. Because some things are worth fighting for, he said. Even if it's stupid. Yira stared at him for a long moment, something flickering in her violet eyes. Respect. Maybe even hope. Before she could reply, the ship's proximity alarms blared. Something was waiting for them near the mining colony. Something big. Jace tightened, his grip on the controls. Yira drew her weapon and stood ready. The uneasy alliance would have to hold, for now, because whatever waited for them in the darkness wasn't coming for peace, it was coming for blood. The mining colony was dead. No lights, no movement, just broken buildings swallowed by black sand under a cracked and dying sky. Jace stepped off the hauler first, scanning the silent ruins with sharp eyes. His boots sank slightly into the soft dust. It smelled like rust, old blood, and forgotten dreams. Behind him, Officer Yira carried the baby alien carefully against her chest, her steps cautious but sure. The place felt cursed. You sure about this? Jace muttered. Yira nodded stiffly. Better ghosts than bounty hunters. They moved quickly through the ruins, taking shelter inside a collapsed hangar. Broken ships lay scattered like dead beasts. Dust choked the air. The only sounds were their own breathing, and the soft, steady heartbeat of the child. As they set up a small campfire from scavenged parts, a heavy silence fell. Neither spoke, but something pressed between them, something bigger than fear. Finally, Yira broke the silence. I lied to you, she said quietly. Jace didn't look up. He just kept fiddling with the fire, sparks dancing from his hands. I figured, he said calmly. Yira's fists clenched. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't just forget my bloodline, I betrayed it. Now Jace looked up, curiosity flickering in his tired eyes. Yira sat down heavily across from him, the baby nestled safely between them. I was part of the purge, she said. When House Velyara was destroyed, I helped. Jace stared at her, stunned. You killed your own family? I was young, foolish. I believed the lies they fed me, she said bitterly. They told us the royal blood was corrupt, dangerous, that wiping them out was the only way to save Valoria. Her voice cracked. I hunted them. I hunted children. Jace said nothing. There was no judgment on his face, only a deep, quiet sadness. "Thought I was saving my people," Yura whispered. "But all I did was help murder hope." She looked at the sleeping baby, tears gathering in her fierce silver eyes. "And now? He's the last," she said. "The last of what I destroyed." Jace leaned back, arms crossed. His face was unreadable. Finally he spoke. "You want forgiveness?" he asked. Yura shook her head violently. "No, I don't deserve it." "Good," Jace said roughly, "because forgiveness isn't given. It's earned." He leaned forward, his voice low and hard. "You want to make it right?" he asked. "Protect him, live for him, fight for him. Not because you're guilty, but because you choose to be better." Yura stared at him, stunned. She had faced judges, war councils, interrogators, but no words had ever struck her deeper than this broken human's simple truth. She bowed her head. "I will," she whispered. "I swear it." The baby stirred, sensing the shift, and reached out a tiny hand toward Yura's face. She closed her eyes and let him touch her. A silent blessing. But peace was short-lived. Suddenly the fire flickered violently, casting monstrous shadows against the broken walls. A low hum filled the air. Jace stood instantly, pulling Yura and the child back behind a collapsed shipwreck. Out of the darkness, a shape emerged, massive, heavy. A black armored figure, twice the size of a man, glowing red under the ruined sky. The bounty hunters were amateurs. This was something else, something worse. A reaper, an assassin built only for one purpose, to erase bloodlines. Yura's blood ran cold. "He's here for the child," she whispered. Jace nodded grimly, drawing the stolen shock baton from his belt. "No, more running," he said. "No more fear," Yura agreed. The uneasy allies stood side by side, weapons drawn, shields battered but spirits burning bright. Because now, this wasn't about past sins. This was about the future, and they would fight for it with everything they had left. The storm hit without warning. Dust and broken metal roared across the abandoned colony as the Reaper advanced. Unstoppable, silent, deadly. Jace squinted against the swirling sand, clutching the baby alien close to his chest. His body ached. His muscles screamed. But he refused to step back. Beside him, Officer Yura stood tall. Her armor cracked, her weapon shaking slightly in her hands. She was breathing hard, but her eyes burned with a fierce, unbreakable fire. The Reaper's heavy boots sent tremors through the ground. Every step felt like a countdown to their end. "There's no running now," Jace said, voice rough. "I never planned to run," Yura replied, tightening her grip on her energy blade. They shared a brief look, a silent agreement, between two broken warriors standing against the impossible. Protect the child, no matter the cost. The Reaper raised his weapon, a massive plasma cannon glowing with deadly light. Jace set the baby down carefully behind a fallen beam, whispering to him, "Stay brave, little guy." Then he turned, standing between the assassin and the future of Valoria. Yura stepped forward too, shoulder to shoulder with him. "No shields," Jace muttered. "No backup." Yura smirked slightly. "Just stubbornness, and maybe a little stupidity," Jace added with a grin. The Reaper fired. The world exploded in fire and sound. Jace grabbed Yura and threw them both behind wreckage as the plasma blast vaporized the ground where they had been. Standing, heart pounding, ears ringing, Jace gasped for air. They couldn't win this with weapons. They had to win it with heart. He looked at Yura, an idea forming, crazy, desperate, but maybe their only shot. "You still have that old emergency beacon?" he shouted over the chaos. Yura blinked, then understood. "The royal beacon?" she asked. Jace nodded. "If the baby's bloodline is real, maybe it will answer." Yura didn't hesitate. She yanked a tiny, hidden device from her belt, an ancient piece of Valorian tech, and pressed it against the baby's chest. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. The Reaper charged forward, his weapon crackling. Then, boom, a shockwave of pure light exploded. From the baby, blasting outward in all directions. The ground trembled. The ruins glowed. The very air seemed to sing. And from the skies above, the stars answered. Ancient Valorian ships, hidden for centuries, uncloaked high above the colony. Golden, beautiful, deadly. The Reaper staggered, confused. Jace didn't waste the chance. With a roar, he grabbed a broken spear from the ground and hurled it with all his strength. The spear struck true, embedding deep into the Reaper's core. The machine screamed, a horrible, metallic sound, and collapsed into the dust. Silence fell. Broken, bruised, barely alive, Jace and Yira stood victorious. The baby alien cooed happily, reaching up to the sky where the Valorian ships hovered like ancient guardians. Yira fell to her knees, overwhelmed. Tears ran freely down her dusty cheeks. Jace stumbled over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "No," she whispered, looking up at him. "We did." Above them, the lead Valorian ship opened a hatch. A soft, golden beam of light descended, bathing them in warmth. A voice echoed from the ship, full of awe and respect. "The Guardian has been chosen. The bloodline endures. You have saved Valoria's future." Jay smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the galaxy lift from his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving. He was part of something bigger, something worth living and fighting for. He looked at Yira, the once proud officer who had found honor again, and at the tiny baby who represented hope reborn. "Guess that bulge you arrested me for," he said with a chuckle, "was more important than we thought." Yira laughed, a real joyful laugh that echoed across the broken colony. As the light lifted them toward the waiting ships, Jace couldn't help but wonder. Maybe destiny wasn't such a bad thing after all. Maybe sometimes the universe made mistakes on purpose, and sometimes it made miracles too.